Welcome to our series of conversations, an initiative of the Hamzaban Cultural Foundation. We've been talking about how we can build a peaceful, just, and prosperous Iran for all of us to thrive in. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how we can balance national and international interests. I'm joined again by Dr. Abedian, and kind of linking in with what we've been talking about. Last time we talked about really creating a global idea of our interconnectivity and understanding where do we stand as individuals or as sovereign nations, and where do we sort of stand as members of a global society, and how do we balance our interests?
I think one of the, again, interesting phenomenon in the 21st century is that nations have become interdependent. Whether they are small or big really matters very little. And in the case of Iran particularly, balancing its national and international or regional interests is significant. Iran is a significant player in the Middle East, has been right through the history. At times it's been praised for its good work, and at times been chastised for its destructive work. But it is an important question for us in Iran and possibly globally as to what is the balance and how should we define the national interest versus regional interest and global interest. There is no question that the boundaries of nationalism and globalism are becoming more and more blurred. It does not mean that we need to necessarily create a false dichotomy, that if it's good for the nation, it's bad for the global, or the dichotomy is so clear that if the foreigners come in, they will impinge upon the national interest. That is the paradigm that I was brought up in Iran. That always foreigners were seen as predators, and we have to guard ourselves against it. Now, if we rethink that whole paradigm and say, look, the globe has evolved, the global economy has evolved, the global culture has evolved in a point that it's very feasible to create a win-win situation, protecting, in fact, maximizing our national interests at the same time, becoming as a nation, as a country, an agent of promoting peace, prosperity, and peaceful coexistence. If we want to do that, charity starts at home. We need to start at home, recognizing diversity of cultures. That's where national interest lies, trying to have one tribe dominating another, one religious group dominating others. Shias wanting to dominate the Sunnis, and the Muslim wants to dominate the Baha'is and the Jews and everybody else, or regarding them as enemies that should be treated with disrespect, as opposed to seeing them as a national resource that they can and should contribute to the prosperity of not only Iran, but also the prosperity and the progress of the Middle East. To create that type of mindset is the first step.
One of the things from my discipline that I think about when you're talking is the idea that we need to also adapt a global identity or a human identity that's overarching, where we identify ourselves first and foremost as members of a human family. And that sort of defines us in terms of our international relations and as human beings really interacting. And then secondarily, we have all these other very valuable and diverse identities that are nested identities. I am Austrian, I am Iranian, I am South African, doesn't matter, or I am a mother, and all these other sub-identities are fluid and they change over time, depending on where I live, depending on what I experience in my life. At some point I'm a mother, at some point I'm a wife, at some point I'm a career woman. All these different things don't define the core of who I am. They refer to the experience that I'm having at any given time. So it would feel like really cultivating this sense of, first and foremost, I'm human, and therefore I'm sharing this planet with other people, and how can we all prosper on this planet seems to be a very important task.
Absolutely, and interesting and fascinating enough, Iran has been at the forefront of this, going back to the times of the great manifesto of human rights, where the Persian Empire became the champion of invading Egypt in order to free the tribes of Israel and to produce the first manifesto as today we know it, many hundred years back or later, as the first manifesto of human rights. Then if we fast forward to the Islamic dispensation, very significantly, people like Sa'di were the very first to articulate this in the poetic and the most vivid way, that human beings are the members of the same body. If you today go to the United Nations building, that line of Sa'di is the inspiring sort of logo of the United Nations. So, and in that context, not only we should put, as you said, the form of allegiance that we give, first and foremost, to being a human being. Whether you are Iranian, whether you are Egyptians, Chinese or South African, Mexican or Libyan, is secondary. So if we redefine the role of national interest as an agent of cultivating this notion of humanity as members of the same body, which in fact was an Islamic concept as articulated by Sa'di and others, and bring it to the 21st century, I see the benefit that Iran could have in creating that mindset, that milieu, or that emotional space, whatever you want to call it, or if you prefer, that deeply ethical foundation for defining who Iranians are, where they come from, whether they were Zoroastrians, whether they were Muslims, whether whatever religious allegiance they have had right through the history. They have been a nation identified with promoting this notion of humanity first. Other things are either experiences or they are important, but they are secondary. And it is important that if we go back to that paradigm, in today's world, Iran could become a significant player in creating a Middle East that is a lot more prosperous, a lot more humanity first, other attributes, other identities next. And if we do that, Iran can have a very important, sustainable and respectable balance between its national interest, regional interest, and international interest. If you put it more nationalistically, as we should do as Iranians, we could actually create a superiority, an intellectual superiority, going back to the roots, drawing on Islamic values, bringing it to the 21st century, where we can convincingly associate Iran with an identity which says the earth is but one country, mankind is citizens.
Very exciting, Iraj. Again, we've only scratched the surface of so many more subjects that we could talk about. We'd love to hear your thoughts on identity. What is identity? What does it mean to be a human, a global citizen, an Iranian? And how do those identities interlink? How can we balance our national and international interests? Thank you again for joining us, and please leave your thoughts with us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and on our website, hamzaban.org.